The Israeli Holocaust Remembrance Day is somewhere between April and the beginning of May. Usually, it was decided in the 50s in order to commemorate the heroism of Jews in the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto. And it was a decision there to show that the Jews were not just victims, but they fought back. The other two dates are the night of the broken glasses, the Kristallnacht, that is commemorated in November 9th. And the latest one is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day that was decided by the UN on January 27th, which is the day of the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration and death camp. And those three dates represent the way we commemorate and remember the Holocaust, because the young state of Israel decided to commemorate not only the victims but also the heroism. And one of the major events in this tragedy that took place over 5 years, the international community and the UN decided to commemorate the end of the Holocaust, or a symbol of the end of the Holocaust with the liberation of the death camps, while the Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glasses, commemorates the beginning. It was the first step. It was the night that people saw what could happen, but didn't realize that it's the path that it's taking us as the Jewish people and the entire world to the worst tragedy in the 20th century. And those are three ways of looking at history. If we want to commemorate the people, we want to celebrate the end or to commemorate the end of the event, or we want to learn from the past and understand that there are symbols that we have to look for in order to understand where this process begins. And with that message, I would like to introduce my friend and colleague Ruth Cohen-Dar. She is the director of the Department of the Combating Anti-Semitism and Holocaust Remembrance at the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ruth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leo, and thank you everyone for being here. A special thank you goes to Ms. Iris Rosenberg from Yad Vashem, who will speak after me and will be the main speaker for this event. I think it's a great opportunity for us to put our fingers on special topics for this day. I would like to start my words with the words of Elie Wiesel, since we are today on the eve of a Memorial Day in Israel. And Elie Wiesel said about memory that memory has its own language, its own texture, its own secret melody, its own archaeology, and its own limitations. It too can be wounded, stolen, and shamed. But it is up to us to rescue it and save it from becoming cheap, banal, and sterile. To remember means to lend an ethical dimension to all endeavors and aspirations. And I believe these are important words to have in our minds while we're talking today about a Memorial Day. Today we are starting the Holocaust Memorial Day in Israel. Next week on the 11th, we will mark 60 years to the opening of the trial of Nazi Germany high-ranking officer Adolf Eichmann, who was responsible for the final solution of the murder of the Jews. The trial here in Jerusalem changed the way that people looked at the survivors here, and had a major contribution to the global awareness of the magnitude of the Holocaust. And a week after that, on the 19th, we will mark 78 years for the outbreak of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. So we are all in all around very important memorial days that are connected to the Holocaust. And I would like to shed light on a phenomena that is very worrying and very concerning, and especially these days, and especially on the internet and the digital space. That is Holocaust distortion and Holocaust denial. Holocaust distortion erodes our understanding of the history and nourish conspiracy theories, dangerous forms of nationalism, and the Holocaust denial, of course, and anti-Semitism. Holocaust denial seeks to erase the history of the Holocaust in order to legitimize Nazism and anti-Semitism. Holocaust distortion is more difficult to understand and identify. It's more slippery. While it acknowledges aspects of the Holocaust as factual, it nevertheless excuses, minimizes, or misrepresents the Holocaust in a variety of ways and through various media. Holocaust denial is a discourse and propaganda that deny the historical reality and the extent of the extermination of the Jews by the Nazis and their accomplices during World War II. It refers specifically to any attempt to claim that the Holocaust did not take place. It includes publicly denying or calling into doubt the use of principal mechanisms like the gas chambers or mass shootings, or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people. Holocaust denial in its various forms is an expression of anti-Semitism, and we need to treat it as such. The goals of Holocaust denial often are the rehabilitation of an explicit anti-Semitism or an explicit promotion of political ideologies. While this is easy to detect, Holocaust distortion is on the rise these days, and especially on the internet. It excuses, as I said, and minimizes the Holocaust. The distortion is becoming increasingly prevalent in contemporary culture, from media to politics and across the ideological spectrum. Holocaust distortion is an international phenomenon and can be found all over the world and everywhere in all corners of society. And despite its prevalence, the issue of Holocaust distortion benefits from a general lack of awareness, of a lack of knowledge. It's harder to identify than Holocaust denial. It is often left unchecked because of that, because it is often a first step towards more radical forms of anti-Semitism, conspiracy thinking and theory, and anti-democratic behavior. It is nevertheless just as dangerous. Countering it requires the participation of all society, working together to address this issue. The major challenge, as I said, is the lack of knowledge and awareness, and we need better education to make sure there is a free and open access to reliable, fact-based information. We need to make sure that our younger generations are well educated and well knowledgeable in the details in order for them, when they come across distortion, they can maybe easily identify it. We need better monitoring tools, better transparency of this monitoring, and national and international cooperation. And presently, no national or international body tracks distortion in a systematic manner. And we need to change that, and we need to work together in order to be able to tackle this very dangerous phenomena on the physical world and especially on the digital world. One solution is to share best practices with international and national bodies and make sure that when we monitor, we know what we are monitoring and that we share that information on that. And we at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, under the leadership of Minister Gabi Ashkenazi, we work with various partners in order to face this challenge of Holocaust denial and Holocaust distortion, as well as telling the story and the history of the Holocaust and making sure that the story is fact-based and reliable, information-based. And together with our partners, we try to reach out to all kinds of audiences on the digital sphere and on the physical sphere as well. It will be an honor for me now to pass the microphone to Ms. Iris Rosenberg, the spokesperson of Yad Vashem, and I'm sure that we will all benefit from what she will tell us in a few minutes. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for your engagement on this topic. Have a good and interesting meeting.
Thank you, Ruth. And just before we give the mic to Iris, I just want to say that we are, for the first time, also broadcasting live on our Facebook account. And Iris will be giving a presentation, a short presentation, about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for a Q&A. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand or send us a message through the group chat, and we'll open your mic. Iris Rosenberg is the spokesperson and director of the communications division in Yad Vashem, and a close friend. Iris, thank you so much for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lior and Ruth, and thank you for inviting me to speak today, and thank you all for participating. I would like to start my talk with the presentation, so I will just share my screen. A short story about a little boy named Zalman Levinson. Can you all see him? Just tell me that you see it, just not. You see the presentation? Yeah. So it's a.
Yes.
Thank you. Zalman Levinson was born in 1932 in Riga, Latvia, to his mother Frida and father Velik. Frida's sister, Zalman's aunt Agnes, she immigrated to the land of Israel in 1936, and the family continued to be in touch, although through letters. Frida used to send letters to Agnes in Israel, and also little Zalman, the kid, used to send paintings, the drawing that he drew, and even leaves that he picked in Riga, Latvia, as a souvenir to his aunt Agnes in the land of Israel then. In 1941, Agnes received the last letter from Frida. At the same year, after the invasion of Nazi Germany to the USSR, the former USSR, the whole family was murdered. In 1955, Agnes filled in pages of testimony in memory of her beloved family members. It's a special form that Yad Vashem built at the beginning of Yad Vashem to commemorate the victims of the Holocaust. And Agnes, in 1955, gave this, you can see the page, on family members, including the little kid Zalman, who was only 9 years old when he was murdered. 80 years ago, exactly in 1941. In 2013, Agnes' daughter gave to Yad Vashem for posterity also the letters that Agnes received from her sister and from her nephew, what I showed you before, and also their photographs. Zalman's story is presented, Yad Vashem is presenting it in a special online Yad Vashem exhibition alongside many stories of other Jewish children who were murdered at the Holocaust. This small story that I chose to begin with is a small example of Yad Vashem's work that was established, Yad Vashem, dozens of years ago, as Lior touched it a little bit at the beginning of his talk. So I would like first to give you a little bit of background about the establishment of Yad Vashem and its role. Not everybody knows that the idea to establish in the land of Israel and the need an organization that will deal with documentation and commemoration of the atrocities and its victims came up already in 1942. But the one who brought this idea were Jews who lived in the land of Israel, where news about what is happening to their people in Europe came to their knowledge. Already then, it was suggested to call this organization Yad Vashem, It's the name Yad Vashem, the words Yad Vashem, is taken from a verse in the book of Isaiah, when the word, and this is the verse, and to them will I give in my house and within my walls a memorial and a name, in Hebrew, a Yad Vashem, that shall not be cut off. When the word memorial, Yad in Hebrew, symbolizes the physical aspect of commemoration, and the word name, Hashem, Yad Vashem, symbolizes the spiritual and the personal aspect of the commemoration. The idea came together during those years, and a decision was made in 1945, immediately after the end of World War II, in a meeting in London between representatives of the Jewish organizations of Jews who lived in Israel and some Holocaust survivors. At the same period, at the DP camps, Holocaust survivors, while they were trying to rebuild their life, they were very active at the DP camps in commemorating and documenting and preserving the memory of the Holocaust. And they, for example, established a historical commission, they call them, that were comprised from Holocaust survivors who wrote and documented testimonies from the fellow survivors at the camps. In 1946, Yad Vashem began to act in an apartment in the center of, in a street in the center of Jerusalem, and where materials that the survivors brought with them to Israel were kept and collected, and also in an office in Tel Aviv. In 1947, there was a press conference in Israel where architectural plans of the Yad Vashem's building were presented. At the same summer, 1947, Yad Vashem already conducted its first international academic conference in cooperation with the Hebrew University. At the first years after the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, where steps were made towards establishing Yad Vashem, and simultaneously continued the collection and activities of collections of various materials. The main active were Holocaust survivors and Jewish institutions and organizations in Israel. A few years after the establishment of the State of Israel, in 1953, the Israeli parliament legislated a law to establish Yad Vashem, the Yad Vashem law, as a national authority, not a governmental arm, but a national authority. Skipping back a decade from then, this is an aerial photo of Yad Vashem. If you can see, Yad Vashem is spread across 48 dunams, 18 hectares, on the Mount of Remembrance in Jerusalem, adjacent to Mount Herzl. We call the Mount of Remembrance, adjacent to us is Mount Herzl, surrounded by Jerusalem forest, and includes memorials and monuments and memorial sites to various topics, such as to the children, to communities, a memorial to the partisans, to the fighters, to the righteous among the nations, and much more. On the Mount of Remembrance, if you can see my the mouse, my eraser, that there is also the education buildings, the archival buildings, and the research buildings of Yad Vashem. The museum complex is in here, most of you know it, but there's also all these other buildings. Yad Vashem area of activity are, by and large, if I'll just giving them the 4 pillars of activity, are commemoration, documentation, research, and education. And we are very active on all these aspects on the Mount of Remembrance in Jerusalem, and very intensively during all the year, not just, of course, during Holocaust Remembrance Day. And we reached, during a regular year, more than actually already, million visitors, not counting the last year, the Corona year, which of course was totally different. Our activities on the mountain is on all these topics, but we are very much also active around the world. Yad Vashem act around the world and with the world. We are very active members in international forums. Our educators and scholars are often invited to talk and present to scholars, to researchers, to teachers, to educators, and other groups around the world. Our traveling exhibitions are being presented in various places around the world. Yad Vashem is also very active online, on the online sphere. We have comprehensive websites in 8 languages, Hebrew and English, of course, but also in French, in Spanish, in Russian, in German, in Arabic, and also Persian. In our website, we present materials in both informative and experiential way, such as online exhibitions that you can see topics of some of these exhibitions here on the screen. Yad Vashem's in most of our websites, we also show data from databases that we collected and digitized along the years. The unique one of them is the central database of Shoah victims' names that contains today more than 4,800,000 names of victims from the 6 million Jewish victims who were murdered at the Holocaust. And we continue to collect and to digitize from various sources. Yad Vashem is also very active on the social media. We have 8 YouTube channels in 8 languages of our website that I mentioned. And we operate a Facebook page in 2 languages, Hebrew and English, Instagram in 2 languages, Russian and English, Pinterest board, if some of you know what that is, in 3 languages, Hebrew, English, and Spanish, Twitter accounts in 5 languages, and of course blogs also in few languages. Since the outbreak of the corona, I can just refer to that, we reinforced and enlarged the activities of our online activities. We added more activities, and for example, hundreds lectures, online lectures that we give in various languages to different groups from the public, if it's researchers, if it's educators, students, and the general public. Or, for example, online virtual tours at Yad Vashem that we did also online, and most of the things we still continue to do, although Yad Vashem is already opened and the museum is open. But and also we invented and created special online commemoration activities last year, especially when we couldn't mark Holocaust Remembrance Day, for example, from here. Now, as you know, we are in Israel. I guess most of you know that we are in stages of getting back to routine when most of the population in Israel are vaccinated. And Yad Vashem, the mountain and the museum, as I said, are opened, of course, according to restrictions. And also this Holocaust Martyrs and Heroes Remembrance Day, this Holocaust Remembrance Day, that last year we were forced to commemorate and mark from home, we will do today on the mountain. But although in reduced capacity or a more, of course, according to restrictions, with much less audience and attendee, but this the same program. Now I would like to give you some background about Holocaust Remembrance Day, which also they are touched a little bit. Holocaust Martyrs and Heroes Remembrance Day is a national day of commemoration in Israel. It's a solemn day beginning at the sunset on the 27th of the month of Nisan and ending the following evening, according to the traditional Jewish custom of marking a day. The Israeli parliament already declared this date as a date to commemorate the Holocaust in 1951. And this date was marked, as Lior mentioned, close to the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the Hebrew date of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, since that was what was important then to the survivors and to the legislators in the state of Israel to emphasize. In 1959, it was already legislated as a law, the Holocaust Martyrs and Heroes Remembrance Day law. According to the law, places of entertainment are closed at evening, and memorial ceremonies are held throughout the country. Marking the start of the day in the presence of the President of the State of Israel and the Prime Minister, dignitaries, survivors, children of survivors, and their family gather together with usually the general public also to take part in the central memorial ceremony at Yad Vashem, in which 6 torches representing the 6 million Jews are lit. The ceremony is broadcast live on all main Israeli television channels, as well as on radio stations and online news outlets, and also on Yad Vashem's YouTube channel. This year also with simultaneously translation to 6 languages, Russian, Spanish, French, German, and Arabic. This year we are doing for also the first year, a simultaneously translation. And I invite you all to, in 3 hours, less than 3 hours from now, it's 8 o'clock, to watch the online, on our YouTube channel, the ceremony. The following morning, tomorrow, the ceremony at Yad Vashem begins with the sounding of a siren for 2 minutes, which is echoed throughout the entire country. For the duration of the siren, work is halted. People walking in the street stops, car pull off to the side of the road, and everybody stands silent at attention in reverence to the victims of the Holocaust. Afterward, the focus of the ceremony at Yad Vashem is the laying of the wreath by dignitaries and representatives of survivor groups and institutions, which also this year we will conduct the same. Again, there will be the dignitaries who lay the wreath and the representative of the survivors and their organizations. And of course, this picture is not from this year. As you see, the crowd here are situated in a different form. Throughout the day of tomorrow, both the television and radio broadcast programs about the Holocaust, newspapers publish articles about the subject, and sometimes even dedicate most of their daily magazine supplement to the Holocaust. The online media also publish articles and prepare special online projects to mark the day. Each year, Yad Vashem chooses a special theme, a central theme to emphasize during Holocaust Remembrance Day, a different central theme. This year's theme is Until the Very Last Jew, 80 years since the onset of the mass annihilation. This theme is, you remember the story that I began with, the story of the kid Zalman that I described at the beginning of my talk. He is an example of the story of the Jews who exactly 80 years ago were doomed to annihilation and murder immediately after the invasion of former USSR of Nazi Germany to former USSR, what is called Barbarossa operation. The murder of the Jews of the USSR and the annexed territories was the beginning of the consolidation of the final solution, which is the systematic annihilation of the Jews by Nazi Germany and its collaborators. By the end of the war, as you know, some 6 million Jews were murdered. And what you see on the screen right now is the special mini site that Yad Vashem is putting up. We uploaded for Holocaust Remembrance Day with materials, and this is where also you can see the live broadcast and other information about the Holocaust. So Lior said 20 minutes, 25, I think that is the end of my presentation. I thank you, and this is some snapshot of Yad Vashem's exhibitions and museum, and I invite you all, as soon as it will be possible, to visit Yad Vashem, and we will host you here, and to see the sites and the exhibitions and memorial. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iris. And now we'll turn to the Q&A. As I said, there are a few ways of asking a question. If your camera is on, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. If not, you can send a message through the group chat and we'll let you ask a question. Who wants to go first? Okay, I'll go first. Iris, in your, I know this last year was very hard. There were no tourists in Israel, and most of the time the public sphere and was basically closed, including in museums like Yad Vashem. Can you tell us how many people visit Yad Vashem on a normal year? What was the situation in 2020? I know that we started 2020 with a huge event in Yad Vashem. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about it. And what are your expectations to now that we are on the last phase of or steps of the COVID-19, people could come and visit the museum?
Okay, so first of all, Yad Vashem on a regular year is around 1 million visitors, more than 1 million visitors actually in 2019 and also in 2018. And it's 70% are visitors from abroad, various groups. If it's tourists and educators or teachers, or school children and youth who comes to Israel and visit Yad Vashem, and around 30% are from Israel. So of course, we began 2020 with a very, very one of the biggest events that Yad Vashem had the World Holocaust Forum with the participating of more than 50 heads of states, and the World Holocaust Forum. It was the 5th World Holocaust Forum that we hosted, the 5th one here at Yad Vashem, and it was under the slogan of remembering the Holocaust, fighting anti-Semitism, and it was, from our point of view, a very important step to have this call from Jerusalem, from Yad Vashem, the relevancy of remembering the Holocaust and the connection between remembering and educating and teaching about the Holocaust and how it's important just for the memory and the sake of the victims who deserve to be remembered, but also for us, the living, and for the Jewish people and the entire world to learn and know from this very event, very the most I would say unique and different event in the human Holocaust history, and what was brought to it and what happened after it, and fight anti-Semitism and distortion and racism and other forms of hate. That is very important to take these messages from the Mount of Remembrance in Jerusalem, and it gained a lot of attention from the world and international world. And this began the year, but not much after that. It was marked to the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, and International Holocaust Remembrance Day, as we all know, is the 27th of January, marked by the UN. And not much after that, in March, we had to close Yad Vashem's gates, which was very, very sad. But I can tell you, and what you asked, immediately after that, Yad Vashem got together into, I would say, first of all, that you can, as you can see, as you can saw from my presentation, Yad Vashem got into this Corona period in already very much situated and with a lot of digital assets. We were very much digitized and were online in many platforms. So we reinforced them and even, as I said, established and invented more ideas. One of them were at Holocaust Remembrance Day last year. There is an event usually of names reading, for example, that this year we will have at Yad Vashem, and also in Israeli parliament and in very places around the world, in Jewish communities and in Israel, of reading the names, a ceremony of reading the names of Holocaust victims, names of family members, names even if they're not family members. Yad Vashem is supplying names from Yad Vashem's names database. And last year, since we couldn't gather and Yad Vashem also was closed, we couldn't do that. So we just decided that we will do something different for the Corona period last year, and we uploaded a special online initiative, and we called the public to record themselves for 80-second video and to film themselves reading names. We put in a more friendly user names from our database on Yad Vashem's homepage, and people who doesn't have names could read the names from our website and upload these to whatever digital online social media platform that they use, hashtag remembering from home. And what we did, we collected all these ceremony videos and conducted from it at the same day a special online commemoration ceremony that was actually comprised from all these short video segments of people from all around the world. And it was the foreign minister of Germany who did it, and also people from in many places around the world. So this is just one example. We now expect, we're still continuing to do a lot of work around Israel and online, educational research and general public online. We didn't stop this because still Yad Vashem is open, but still most of the visitors are from abroad. And we expect that slowly we will get again to the numbers. I guess I hope that 2022, if all the world, it not just depend on Israel, of course the situation in the world is also part of it, that we will get to it, but we learned a lot how we can even use more, and I guess all the world learn, and better, the online digital tools to educate and to reach out to groups and people around the world, and some of the things that we began before, or we reinforced or invented, that we will continue to use. Long question, a long answer. I see there's a question.
Thank you. There's a question from Shuman Samar.
I can read the question, but I'm not really sure I understand. What plans do you have on media engagement on matters awareness? I think what I answered.
I think you answered that as well when you talked, but there was a question. Someone raised its hand.
Yes.
Shuman?
Yes, sir. Good evening. I'm Suman Sharma from New Delhi. I would like to know what steps are you taking to counter Holocaust denial and distortion?
Okay, so I can, two things. First, I will echo what Ruth spoke about at the beginning. Yad Vashem is co-chair of the delegation, of the Israeli delegation to the IRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And as an organization, one of the leading and establishing organization and country of this organization, we are very much active in all connected to Holocaust denial and distortion through this organization, together, of course, with the foreign minister, which is the co-chair of the Israel delegation there. And I think what Ruth described, the special booklet and special programs and special the IRA anti-Semitism and Holocaust distortion that they're dealing with, we are part of it. So first of all, this is one small example of that we are active with. The second thing is, I have to tell you the general approach of Yad Vashem to Holocaust distortion and denial is education. And what we believe in is that first and foremost, Holocaust denial and distortion, most of it is come out from anti-Semitism. It's not people who doesn't really know about the Holocaust. And what we are aware, what really matters to us is the people who listen to them. So what we do in all our activities, in all our sphere of activities, and education is one of them, but also the online sphere, as you saw, is to engage in as much as we can with uploading and giving material historically accurate, and informative and experiential about the Holocaust. So this is why Yad Vashem is so active in conducting research and in conducting seminars to international, dozens of seminars to educators from around the world who come to Yad Vashem to learn, or do it online right now also, or to upload materials to our website in a way that it can be suited to different levels of the crowd. If it's to researchers, if it's to educators, to journalists, to the public, in a different ways. And we do seminars for press, for example, and we are active on social media. For example, I'll give a short example how we want to reach the crowd, not necessarily where they're looking for Holocaust. For example, if there is a European or if there are an Olympic Games, so we are uploading to and hashtagging the Olympics to people who are interested in sport, things about from our, of course, databases and from our collections about sport in the Holocaust. Or if it's Women International Day, about women during the Holocaust, on our social media, on our website, and in other platforms that we're active in. This way so our main idea of fighting Holocaust denial and distortion is, first of all, telling the accurate story based on historical facts and historical research in all the forms that we can do. And I just mentioned one of them, which is the IRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, but there is a lot more. And also make available and accessible as much as we can information about the Holocaust in different ways, not just the one that Holocaust researcher is interested in, but also the one that the journalist is, if it's following us or even not following us, as I mentioned.
If I may just add,
sure.
Iris, if I may just add on government level, we engage not only with Yad Vashem, but for sure Yad Vashem is an important partner. We engage also with other governments in dialogue and trying to promote cooperation between Israel. Someone is not muted. Professor Makesudova. Thank you. Thank you. So we engage in dialogue with other partners in other countries. We engage in activities in IRA as well, but also in other frameworks like the UN, where we try to promote and push for fact-based information and promote open research and access. We connect, for instance, Yad Vashem's International School of Holocaust to countries all over the world, and we try to engage them in getting practice for their teachers in their countries. And a really good example is right now on our call, there is a big group of students from St. Petersburg, I believe, who were interested in learning more about this day and educating themselves. And together with our consulate in St. Petersburg, our consul general there, Ms. Olga Sluv, we have managed to bring those students on this call to be part of this conversation, to learn more about what we are doing here and about Yad Vashem and the teachings of the Holocaust.